You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Caution, spoilers ahead.
Block your ears and cover your eyes because Sam and I are back for a spoiler-filled review. Well, welcome back to this very special edition of The Bargain Bin Gamer, a Double T Media production here on the BQN Podcast Network. The Bargain Bin Gamer is where me, my usual co-host Mitch, my friend who's joining me today, Sam, we play some of the cheapest and shittest games out there so that you don't have to, and hopefully we find a few hidden gems along the way. I am joined today not by Mitch. Mitch is not in the studio with me from all the way in Missouri. It is the Bargain Bin Gamers diversity hire. Sam, how are
That's actually how I describe myself anytime I come on the show. So
shoes on the other foot now, buddy. How have you been?
good, very good. Very good.
Yeah. So you and we've got a bit of a special topic to talk about today, something that is a bit near and dear to your heart, not so much to my heart. I really am doing this just for you, and I hope you feel the I hope you feel the love because of that. Excellent. So those who've been listening to the show will know that Mitch and I spoke a few weeks ago about the new release game from Ubisoft, which is Star Wars Outlaws. What would you call it? Open world?
Worlds.
Open.
I would toss the S on there. Open worlds.
Yeah, open worlds, I think, is a really, really good way to put it. Open worlds. Anywho, as I mentioned on the pod a few weeks ago, I spent $170 on the pre-order for this. Now, when we did the pod, at that point in time, I'd only played about 20 hours of the campaign. I've now finished it. Sam, have you finished the campaign as well?
Yeah. No, I am well past the main campaign.
You're well. Oh, wow. Okay. That means that there's more of it that I should be playing and may not want to, but we'll unpack that. But what we wanted to do is we really wanted to come back post having spent that much time on the game and that much money on the game and talk about, well, just how worth it was it. So there's a couple of I think there's going to be some differing opinions from Sam and I today. And Sam, that's largely comes from the fact that you're quite the Star Wars fanatic. Is that right?
I am one of a select few people who can say that they are a canon Star Wars character of their own invention, thanks to having worked at Galaxy's Edge. I was opening team of the Orlando version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and we were told by Lucasfilm, and I don't care what anyone says, this is what they said. So they said we were as canon as Luke Skywalker. So we got to, as long as we stuck to the very, very strict rules, we got to be in that galaxy. And man, for a fan, that was just a trip.
You're quite the fan. I'm okay with Star Wars. You know me. We work a lot on the Trexperts quiz together. Star Trek is my jam. So I don't know what it was that possessed me to pay so much for the game. I think it's just because I felt like I wanted to be able to play it 3 days early so I could pretend that as a podcaster I got access to it before everyone else, when really I just coughed the cash up for it and there was no bonuses involved for my several hundred downloads a week. First of all, how many hours have you put into it? Do you know?
30 hours and 11 minutes.
30 hours and 11 minutes. Okay, that's not too bad. And I think that's probably kind of the campaign takes up a pretty small chunk of that, right? Like you can breeze through the main parts of the campaign pretty easily.
Yeah, I would say I probably beat the campaign around hour 25. So I've probably only put about 5 hours into post-campaign stuff.
Let's talk about the story and the campaign, right? So this is a set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So according to Wikipedia, it's somewhat shortly after the Battle of Hoth. There is a criminal syndicate called Zarek Besh, which is headed up by Sliro.
Yeah.
I only finished the game last night. I should remember this. Anyway, so he's the head of all these different criminal syndicates. So enter Kay Vess, who I believed was an orphan girl. Turns out she's not. Yeah, who is on the planet of the one from the second of the J.J. Abrams movies, which the Casino Planet. It has a name. You should know it. You worked there.
I didn't work there. I worked on the other side of the galaxy, but you're talking about the Outer Rim planet Cantonica, and specifically the casino city of Canto Bight.
Yes, that one. Now, she tries to pull off a heist on Sliro's big vault. She gets caught. She gets a death mark on her, which essentially means that everyone in the world or in the galaxy is trying to kill her because the reward to do so is quite high. And anyway, long story short, she winds up on a big epic chase to recruit a ragtag group a la Mass Effect to go and do the heist again. Is this something that is actually Star Wars canon now? Because I believe Disney has kind of said all of the extended media, games, books, comics, that is unlike Star Trek, which is considered beta canon if it comes in anything other than a Paramount produced moving picture, is considered beta canon. This is canon in Star Wars. Is that correct?
Yes. So everything that comes after the 2012 buyout, I think from 2014 onwards, is canon to the films, the games, the TV shows. Everything has to stick to it. There's a dedicated group called the Lucasfilm Story Group that makes sure that they're flexible, but they want to make sure that nothing directly contradicts something from one of the films or a book. And so with this story, you actually have quite a bit of leak in from areas I didn't expect. There's an entire planet that only so far had appeared in the Aftermath trilogy and then Resistance Reborn. There's a character from the sequel trilogy that pops up that I did not expect, and I was so excited to see him. But also the Marvel Comics, there was just a multi-arc storyline called Crimson Reign, where Crimson Dawn directly goes up against the Empire, and you directly hear about events like Kira's auction for Han Frozen and Carbonite and all of that good stuff from the comics. And it's just really nice to see that connectivity.
Yeah, because there were times when you and I were talking about the game during playtime where I maybe thought we were playing a different game because you seem to be having a much more deeper experience than what I was. I picked up on some of the little bits and pieces from the prequel trilogy. I thought ND5 was kind of really cool as one of the droids from the prequel trilogy in the original, where the big battle in Naboo, the Roger droids. Come on, don't look at me like that. What are they called?
So you're talking about the B1 series battle droid made by Bactoid Armory, when Indy 4 is a DX series commando droid.
Right. His name's ND5, by the way. You got that wrong. It's ND5. What?
What did I say?
ND4. You're a bad fan. You're a bad fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I picked up on some of those little bits and pieces, and they were kind of cool. And I can hear now from talking to you that this is a bit of a Star Wars fan's wet dream.
You'd think so, but it's interesting how this game scratches every Star Wars itch I've had since
Really?
leaving Galaxy's Edge. Like, I will say that I had an amazing experience with this game of just being able to kind of lose myself in Star Wars again.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's because I did it professionally, I guess you could say, that it just hit a little bit different. But like at the same time, there were definitely some things that I did not enjoy it at all.
What did they do wrong story-wise versus what did they do right?
I feel like they shouldn't have done. This is a huge spoiler for the end of the game. Kay Vess kind of gets screwed over by every single person she meets. I think it would have been nice if, like,
Yeah.
Jalen, the guy who I was rooting for the whole game, like, didn't turn out to be who I kind of expected him to be. So in that aspect, there's that, but also like they introduced another syndicate for no reason. They left out one of the most powerful syndicates completely, and then they reference it in game, but they don't include it. Which, I mean, I guess you could do a DLC or like an expansion down the line to include it, but
Mm-hmm.
like it feels, you can feel its absence, so it's really kind of weird.
I do know what you mean about how Kay was just getting screwed over by everyone. It felt like it was, and maybe that I felt that was kind of the point, because this is not your Luke Skywalker Jedi magic powers Star Wars. This is your Han Solo, the seedy underbelly of the Star Wars universe, right? Because the main kind of plot that's going on underneath this is that Sliro works for the Empire and is infiltrating the underworld to try and root out the rebels, who, of course, make themselves known at some point as well. I will say I really liked Kay as a character. I talked about this last week with Mitch as well. I thought she was a really fantastic lead in this game. I thought the vocal performance was really good and just the general characterization of her. What I thought really let it down was the terrible animation of her. So she's got that, and I feel like we're better at this now in gaming, but she's got that deadness in the eyes, which is like she's the evil AI avatar which will give you a recipe for lasagna but secretly wants to kill you, like that kind of thing. Did you get those vibes too, or was that just me?
I did, and there were, I will say 90% of the performances are great, but there are a few legacy characters from the movies who show up, and some of them get it spot on, and then the others are like really kind of miss. But like altogether, I think she's a great character.
Mm-hmm.
But 100% I agree with you where there were moments where it was like there was nothing behind those eyes.
There's nothing behind those eyes. Yeah. And did you find Nyx adorable? Would you?
As the owner of several animals,
yeah, or one
various,
who keeps knocking your own Nyx there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that was my favorite part of the game, the relationship between Kay and Nyx, because as a pet owner, as someone who has worked as a zookeeper before,
Mm-hmm.
it's really nice to see, because animals are fantastic, and I love that instead of, they could have easily made Nyx a droid,
Yep.
and I don't think anyone would have complained, but I love that he's not a droid, and that it's a little bit more of a cute and snuggly Chewbacca.
Well, he's kind of the Grogu of this, right? He's the baby Yoda of this game. Star Wars has either a cutesy, adorable little alien character or a wacky droid. Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. The core I found of the gameplay, what I thought was the core of the gameplay, and then I got confused as to what the point of it was until the very end, was the gaining and losing favor from the different criminal syndicates. So the Pikes, the Crimson Dawns, Let me just look at that tab on my computer. Well, I don't think you really did much of Zarek Besh. And there was the other one with the Queen.
Of the Ashiga clan.
The Ashiga clan. I went with the Ashiga clan because I was, gay man. I was like the Queen, like, yes, work, she's fierce. But that was an interesting, and it's not like we haven't kind of seen this in games before. Did you spend a lot of time on doing missions for the different syndicates to try and win their favor? And who did you try to win the favor of and why?
So when I normally play Ubisoft games, I normally don't like follow rules. I like to kind of like
you rebel.
Oh, thank you. I do everything there is to do, and I don't worry about story. With this game, I came at it a little different. I came at it as the Star Wars fan I am. So like, one of the main mechanics is you'll have a mission for one syndicate, and then about halfway through you'll find a way to benefit by giving it to another syndicate.
Yeah.
And so I followed the Star Wars underworld rules. You never screw over the Hutts, and you don't care about the Pikes. And I had a fantastic time until the Pikes started coming after me, and then it got a little tedious.
Yeah, I was sort of trying to help out the Pikes a little bit because they share the name of my dog and my favorite Star Trek captain, but it was spelt differently. So I eventually was, no, they can get fucked. I was very much Crimson Dawn. I kind of just swapped between them, but yeah, it was Super Queen who I kind of went with in the end. But I did find it was very easy to lose favor with one. You could do quite a few missions to get yourself up into an excellent rating, which gives you certain benefits. You get cheaper deals at vendors who are affiliated with those syndicates. You can walk freely through their parts of cities on different planets, which could make certain missions a lot easier, where you didn't have to do all that stupid stealth. But we'll talk about that later as well. My point that I was about to make, though, is I found that I would build up all that capital with one, and then I would do another mission for, say, Crimson Dawn or something, and then they would tempt me to screw over the Pikes at the end, and I would do that one thing, and then my reputation with that other one would go all the way in the toilet, which I don't think the game really quite warned you for. It was either one or the other. I don't think you could maintain good relationships with more than one or two of the syndicates at a time.
Actually, I have excellent in my current playthrough. I have excellent with every single crime family except I think the Ashiga and the Pikes.
Oh wow, okay, so it is. I just didn't try hard enough, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I can live with that. Now, I thought it was all for nothing as well until the very end, where it's like, oh, we've got to. Yeah, you're having this big battle with the Star Destroyer, which, again, there was parts of that really, really frustrated me because I would kind of fly towards the ship and just kind of get stuck on the hull. But it was it all of a sudden clicked because they're like, everyone's going to die. The rebels are going to get found out. And we're like, we put out a distress call. And I'm like, of course, whoever I've got the most favor with is going to show up. And, fierce queen bitch from the Ashiga, along she came, and voila. I didn't have anyone else. So I'm assuming you could probably potentially make that whole final thing a lot easier and have lots of them show up at the same time, maybe. What did you have at the end?
I wish I knew. So whenever I got to that battle, which was, I will say, not great for a lot of reasons, including the fact that in the last major Star Wars game, there was a major Star Destroyer battle, and it was done so much better. But with the in-game ships that come to help, I bet you all of the syndicates can come at once, but at the time of that battle, I also only had the Ashiga clan.
Right.
Excellent. And they were the only ones that showed up.
Right. Yeah, which I don't know if it really made that much of a difference. And it was kind of a little bit anticlimactic. Kay's steals a ship in the beginning of the game. The Trailblazer kind of becomes your Millennium Falcon of sorts. I found the space battles were okay. I don't know if a Star Wars game has really done space battles that well, probably since the Rogue Squadron games back in the GameCube days. But, you know, I could be looking at that for a little bit of a nostalgia kind of lens. But there were parts of that which highlighted some of the overall problems with the game for me, and that was just how janky it could be at times. For as beautiful as it looked, for as polished as it was, there was so much unpolished, for want of a better term.
I'll definitely say in space, the ground is very well done, but it's kind of like Ubisoft took everything they had in the pantry and just shoved it into this game. And so I feel like some things are done really well. Like I feel like the environment is beautiful.
Yep.
I feel like the transition from ground to space is amazing, but then you get into space and it doesn't feel like you're like in space. It feels like you're just, on a boat moving back and forth quick.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't have the same like zippy feeling of the Millennium Falcon, chasing down a TIE fighter through the asteroid field or something like that.
Yeah, it felt... The space sections felt like an afterthought. Yeah. There was maybe 1 or 2 missions towards the beginning of the game that actually required you to go into space and land on a station or a ship and do something. And, there were some little distractions along the way. You could maybe help some people who were being attacked by pirates or TIE fighters or whatever and get a couple of little extra resources as a result. But it's like... I reckon typical Ubisoft style, they've just gone, oh, all right, we've been given the Star Wars IP, we're going to have to do some space shit.
Yeah.
Because you could actually, in a way, you could avoid going into space altogether because you could just fast travel between planets if you had visited a location already as well. Talking about some of that's kind of the space side of things. Okay, so it largely happens on the ground, right? So a lot of it is rinse and repeats of the same missions. So you're either sneaking in to hack away at some system and steal some data, or there are some sort of run and gun kind of sections, but I think like a lot of games that include stealth, they encourage you to use stealth, because I found that when I screwed the stealth up, my chances of survival were pretty slim because you're overwhelmed straight away, which is kind of the point, I guess. Are you a fan of stealth gameplay like this, and do you feel they did it well?
Yes and no. So I love the Assassin's Creed games, especially when it's a very fluid kind of stealth.
Yeah.
This game, again, it comes so close to that and then seems to just miss the mark. There were a lot of moments where I was completely in hiding and the stormtrooper saw me and an entire hangar went on alert, causing me to have to do it again. And so there's a little bit of frustration when I would constantly accidentally do something to get spotted and then have to roll back like maybe 10 minutes to do it again. But I'll say there were moments too with the stealth where I was just over the moon. Like, I think my favorite mission in the whole game is when you sneak into Jabba's palace. Like,
yeah, that was fun. That was fun. I did enjoy that one too. But was that mainly because you got to see Han Solo and Carbonite as you were creeping through?
No, it was because we got to see Jabba's menagerie. We've always heard about the legendary menagerie of Jabba the Hutt.
That's the mission when Nix gets kidnapped. That pulled at the heartstrings. That one. That pulled. I felt that. I was like, don't you kill Nix, game, otherwise I'm throwing my controller out the window.
Yeah.
The other kind of mission that was very common was the parkour mission. It was either stealth or parkour or a combination of all of the above. And the parkour stuff was probably the more tedious than the stealth. I didn't like as well.
Completely agree.
Yeah. I didn't like with the stealth that you had missions where all of a sudden it was like, absolutely do not get spotted. right? Do not get spotted. Otherwise, you don't, go jail, go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And then there were other ones where you could get spotted. You just made sure they couldn't raise the alarm. What I found really frustrating and unfair about those situations was that there were panels to trigger the alarms around the rooms. And you could send Nicks out to disable them, or you could sabotage them yourself if you happened to walk past them. On several occasions, I had taken out all the alarm panels, and one of the bad guys would just stand in the middle of the room and go, "I'm raising the alarm." And the alarm would go off. And they didn't do anything. They just stood there and shouted out, "I'm raising the alarm." The little timer came above their head to say that they were running for the alarm. And then other times they'd run for the alarm panel and go, "Oh, it's been destroyed." But I found that it broke my immersion in the stealth gameplay because it felt unfair because I could not rely on the game to play by its own rules. And that always pisses me off a little bit with games.
Yeah. I will say I didn't mind that quite that much. I mean, it was annoying for sure, but I noticed the only ones who weren't using the panels to call people in were like officers or
Mm-hmm.
people in helmets and stuff like that. So it kind of I mean it kind of made sense, but at the same time from a gameplay aspect it wasn't the best.
Now, there was combat in this. It was good. There were parts of this where I was like, this actually feels like a Star Wars laser fight because it's literally just lasers flying here, there, and everywhere, and no one's hitting anyone. And I found that like I could actually sometimes just like press the sprint button and run, and there'd be stormtroopers just missing me because I was moving. And the part of it which has been a big frustration for people online is the weapons. So Kay has her blaster. You can upgrade it. You can paint it, make it look pretty. You can add some different, stun effects and explosion effects to it, which you can use strategically. Enemies drop weapons and you can pick them up. But the second you do anything, you climb a ladder, you answer a call on your comm, you swap out for a grenade, you drop that weapon. You can't take it anywhere with you. That's really disappointing.
Yeah. I have a thing in Star Wars games. I always use the same blaster no matter what game I'm in, or at least I try to, which is the E11, which is the Stormtrooper blaster rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I do Star Wars costuming, and all my characters carry an E11.
Yeah.
So it's just something fun I do. And you can pick it up in this game, but like you're saying, I mean, you get like 5 shots and then you throw it, and that just sucks.
Yeah, but even to just climb a ladder and then you would literally just see it fall down on the ground. I could accept that she can't take every gun with her and there's no big loadouts. She's a Han Solo type. She's got her trusty blaster at her side, but at least she could swing it over her back and hold on to it until it's run out of ammo. That was disappointing because there'd be guns laying around, and sure, maybe you could send Nicks to go and get them for you, which was kind of cool. I used that a lot to get health vials and stuff like that during combat. But otherwise it was just risk certain death to run out and get that cool gun that you might get to use for all the 2 seconds.
One thing this game does really well that other Star Wars games kind of fumble is having a variety in an environment. You won't have the same animals, the same plants, the same aliens.
Yeah.
No matter where you go, and everyone looks a little different, and you don't have cookie cutter people. So it becomes an interesting thing that you're stuck with this little blaster pistol when you could have gone out and gotten a DL-44 or one of the other blaster pistols that are famous through Star Wars, and you could even have made those like cosmetics that you have to purchase, and I'm telling you, people would have bought it. And it's just kind of an odd thing to be missing in a big open world game like this.
Yeah, and I found that the upgrades to the blaster were fairly underwhelming. I think I got 2 main ones, and that was the Electro Bolt, which was necessary for me to be able to get anywhere because there were especially droids, battle droids. You could only really take them down with the electro bolt, and there was the explosive one which I maybe got to use a handful of times. Now you could make little upgrades to them to make them more powerful. It's got that very kind of Witcher 3. There's just lots of scrappy things lying around that you just feel compelled to pick up and hope that they will get you an upgrade once you finally get back to the ship. So it felt like a lot of things in this game. It felt like it was existing open world mechanics or just general video game mechanics, and they tried to sew a lot of different ideas into a Star Wars coat of paint on every other Ubisoft franchise. And there was just a lot of them that weren't being done very well. But yeah, it played it safe. It played it way too safe. It could have been so much more ambitious, but I just don't think that the AAA game industry has that kind of ambition anymore because of how much money they spend and how much it probably cost Ubisoft to even get the Star Wars license. But I've said before that this world feels very lived in. There's lots of activity going on around everywhere. There's little side conversations. People are going about their business, eating at restaurants, and you can't interact with everything and everyone as much as maybe I would have liked to, but there's lots of other little things to do. You mentioned there's a card game in particular, which is very common to have the game within a game, something where you can go and do some gambling and earn some extra money to go and buy more upgrades and all that kind of stuff. So Sabak was the name of the game. Now, I did not realize that, and as it seems with a lot of things in this, was something that already existed in the Star Wars universe. Is that correct? Wasn't just invented for this game?
I actually used to teach people how to play it at Disney World. I've played it with Chewbacca.
Where did it originate? Which Star Wars did it come from?
Oh, it came from, I believe, the first novel ever to continue the story, which was something Mindor. But it's gonna come to me. And who cares? But it was mentioned as like a card game that Han played, and then from there on, the extended universe picked it up, and Lando is a renowned card shark. And then when they did the canon reboot, it was something that got saved because it was a defined card game that they didn't have to do any work to invent, and it was so famous. And then there are like hundreds of versions of it, but they choose to do Kessel Sabak, which is great.
I will admit I did not mind playing Sabak. It was very easy to pick up. Sometimes the rules of these games can be really convoluted. In the recent Final Fantasy VII remake, they had the game within a game, and I found it was so tricky to master, and there were sections of the game where you had to play it and you had to win, and you just spent far too long on it. This was actually really quite easy to pick up, and it felt a little bit more like that kind of card game of chance where there's an element of chance and there's an element of strategy at the same time. It was okay. I didn't mind sitting around playing Sabak for a little bit. Were there any other little bits and pieces of kind of padding out apart? Any of the other side missions or any of the other activities that kind of really resonated with you?
I love that you could pet every animal you come across.
That was yes, that's right. The swamp rats and all that kind of stuff. Because at first I was just like, wait, what's going on? Do I have to shoot it? And then it's like, no, you could just pat it. Just pat it.
Yeah.
As a fellow animal lover, Sam, I get it.
But it's not just like being able to pet them. It's like driving out to the Dune Sea, which is another Star Wars thing I'd always wanted to do. And like you're driving around and there are herds of banthas or a pack of dewbacks. And then did you encounter the Great Dragon?
I don't think I did, no. I did not. I didn't do as much exploring. I really just kind of wanted to get through it.
I think that's what I spent 90% of my time doing, just driving around these places. And I was driving through the Dune Sea, and I caught sight of something in the sand, and I was like, ooh, I wonder if that's something cool. Turned out to be the Krayt Dragon skeleton from A New Hope, which was awesome. But then like the ground started shaking and a red marker came up, and I kind of gunned it on the speeder bike, and the crate dragon from the Mandalorian was cruising behind me like a sandworm from Dune, just chasing me out of the desert, which was so cool.
And maybe that's why I needed to be a little bit more curious in this, and it could be more representative of my stage of life, because you are a little bit younger than me. And I spent the money on this game, and I buy so many games, like, you know, bigger AAA games as well as the shitty budget games I buy for this channel, and I just don't finish so many of them because I get distracted by something else shiny. And I really feel like for the money I spent on Star Wars Outlaws, I should have been doing some of the exploring that you've been doing. And I guess I still could. I've finished the campaign. Lots of that other stuff is still there. And I like that what you're telling me, that, you know, hey, there actually is a lot of really interesting detail that Ubisoft and Massive Games have built into this that is just out there for you to find. Probably makes this easier to recommend as a full price title than a non-Star Wars fan.
I actually wouldn't.
You wouldn't recommend it to a Star Wars fan?
Not at the full price.
Not at full
I will
price.
say I didn't pay full price and I got early access. So something I'm a big proponent of is the kind of revolution of gaming where platforms are understanding that, you know, gaming is expensive. Producing these games is a nightmare for devs.
Yeah.
And it creates all kinds of issues with the customer when inflation and other, you know, economic issues start, you know, trade negotiations over the planet Naboo, you know, boost the price of games. And so these subscription services, which the one I used was Ubisoft Plus.
Okay. Yes.
It was $18, I think, for 1 month, and I got access to the entire catalog of Ubisoft games and early access to anything that came out. And that's, you know, for a museum director on a budget, you know, it was nice to be able to play this game early and not pay as much as you did. It feels so.
That's a good bit of advice, though. $18 if you get it through the Ubisoft. No matter how many times I try to say that word, I am always going to fuck it up.
The DLC for this is sounding really great.
Okay.
But again, it's really great because the characters who they've announced are going to be in it are these huge characters from the Star Wars underworld.
Nice.
So if you don't know who Hondo Inako is, you're not going to be as excited.
Let's talk about this game technically for a moment. So it was largely sold to me on just how beautiful it looks. It is a very pretty game with some moments of ugliness, namely, you know, some of the character animations in the faces in the cutscenes, collision detection in space and on the ground, a couple of little glitchy bits. Not as glitchy, like, you know, game didn't freeze and I didn't fall into environments and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was largely good. But did you find, as a PC gamer, I'm guessing you're running a pretty hefty rig to be able to play this, right?
So I have a really heavy-duty computer for professional stuff, video editing and
yeah, of course,
rendering and stuff like that. So thankfully, a benefit to that is to get a pre-built computer. You also get a pretty good graphics card. So I will say, compared to other games that I've played on launch on this PC, like Frontiers of Pandora, I didn't have any issues.
Okay, that's good.
I think I had one glitch that was a bug that was story related. I don't think I was able to complete a quest. I still don't think I've actually gone back to do that. But
yep.
They patched that already. Like that's something in the modern era of gaming that I'm a big fan of. Is, you know, in the olden days, if there was a bug, you're not going to fix it because you don't have the internet infrastructure to send out that patch.
Yes, but they also, games did not get, well, most part, like, you know, AAA games back in their day, they didn't get released until they were ready. Things like Zelda Ocarina of Time and stuff like that, and you know, back in the N64 games, other games like Perfect Dark, I can remember waiting for ages for those games to come out because their release windows would just slip and slip and slip because they needed to get it perfect. So there's a bit of a double-edged sword there, I think, a little bit, though, right? There is getting a complete product versus the risk of getting a buggy product like a Starfield or a Cyberpunk 2077 and then having to wait for IGN to review it 3 years after release to go, hey, it's actually really good now. I don't think this game is plagued quite so much, but it's not as broken as some of these other games have been. It's just got some things in it that are like, really? Okay, sure. I guess it's okay that I get stuck on the hull of the Star Destroyer instead of bouncing off its shields or something like that. And I guess it's kind of okay that Kay's hair sometimes frizzes out of nowhere, but whatever. What did you have to dial your settings down on your PC or anything like that to be able to run it?
No, didn't touch it, which is weird because normally for these big games I do kind of have to throttle it, but I've not had any issues running it one bit.
Now, I wonder if there's any kind of similarity on the PC, because I'm not that much of a PC gamer, between what we get on PS5 and Xbox Series X, which is the performance and the quality modes. Now, on PS5, it's got 3 options. There is performance, which is your as close to 60 frames per second as it's kind of going to get, but not as much sort of fidelity in the graphics. There is the quality mode, which is like, maybe 30 frames per second. Everything looks amazing. And I must admit, I always turn that on to start with, and then 20 minutes later, I have to turn it off because games like this, it's just so hard to play at those frame rates in a game that requires a lot of precision movement, especially in a lot of the gunplay. This one also came with an interesting quality favor 40 frames per second, which was trying to find some kind of middle ground. Now, I get that this is kind of consoles almost trying to give you a bit of a PC-like experience because you can go in and tweak things. You can also go and tweak in the amount of motion blur and all that kind of stuff. You never used to be able to do this in console games, but you can now. But I wonder why they bother, because I know so many people, and I'm interested if listeners and viewers are having this same experience as well. Does anyone play through these games with performance mode turned on? Because it's pretty, don't get me wrong. And sometimes when I'm in a nice area, I'll turn it on just to see what it looks like in performance mode. But it's so unplayable. Not unplayable. That's not fair. But you do get a better gaming experience once you turn it off. And I don't think you lose that much in the graphics anyway. And, I was looking this up before, and I've got it in front of me at the moment, just how big a production this was for Ubisoft. It's amazing to think that it gets done at all. There's over 600 developers involved in this. And when I'm watching the closing credits, it's like Ubisoft in Canada, and then there's Ubisofts in different parts of Asia and different parts of Europe. And it's like, wow, how are you coordinating this, right? You've probably got teams who were literally just devoted to the little tendrils on Nix's head out there. It's crazy. And then some of their big names were on it too. So creative director Julian Garrity from The Division and its sequel, which is a very, very popular Ubisoft game. Some of the people from Watch Dogs, and which is maybe not as popular, but some of the directors behind the Far Cry series as well. So, they had really devoted some of their heavy hitters to this. Ubisoft does what these big AAA development houses do and hyped this game up to within an inch of its life because it was a huge production for them. They spent a lot of money on it. And then it comes out, and then instantly it's like, IGN reviews it and goes, it's just okay. It's a bit rough around the edges. And then immediately my YouTube feed starts filling up with this is pathetic. This is sad. This is just bad. Rah, rah, rah. Like, okay, whatever, dude. You just spent $170 on it too. So you're just feeling a bit jaded by that. Do you feel that all of the hate leveled at this game is warranted, or is it just the internet being the internet?
I don't think it deserves any of the amount of hate it's getting for the reasons it's getting hate. And I feel like that is something that could be kind of tossed towards any Star Wars thing. Whenever I worked at Galaxy's Edge, I will say I was there right around the time Rise of Skywalker was about to come out. And people were just so vicious, even to us, the mild-mannered theme park employees paid minimum wage to stand there and sell you a $10 Chewbacca plushie. So, you know, it's not something I didn't expect, because the Acolyte, probably my favorite Star Wars TV show that's come out, got canceled. And I think that is a travesty, because they were hinting at a character who has one of the greatest backstories in Star Wars history, probably one of the greatest expanded universe pieces, the Darth Plagueis book, and Darth Plagueis the character. And the fact that the showrunner took the time to put in the effort to that show to make it so accurate to the books and stuff like that. Same thing can be said about this game. This game has taken so much effort to capture the Star Wars feel. They've got references to stuff that only occurs in comic books that who knows how many people are reading. And I think that alone is beyond what they had to do. And I feel like the people who are being sexist towards Kay Vess, because she's not, a bimbo.
Oh yeah. No, Mitch and I talked about that last week. So Kay has received a hate because she's not feminine enough, because she doesn't have big boobs, because because there's no male character to choose to play, and she's not some hypersexualized Bayonetta or something like that, right? Which I mean, all of those characters are perfectly fine, right? But I think the Acolyte kind of suffered from the anti-woke brigade a little bit as well, because I've not seen it, but I do know that there is some quite wonderful and fair representation in that show, and people are like, oh, don't rub it in my face. It's like, what's being rubbed in your face? It's just literally people who don't look or sound like you. Like, why is that so bad? Last week when I was talking to Mitch, I did say that, one, we've got good fair representation in a strong female lead, which is Kay. I said that we hadn't really kind of seen any queer characters or anything yet. I did. What was the guy who upgraded the speeder so that it could go on water? Two lesbian armies.
Yeah. I have a friend who I fangirled out, because that's Snap Wexley, who is Poe Dameron's best friend in the sequel trilogy.
There you go.
And so, in the books, the Aftermath books, his aunts are characters, and so when you get to meet them first, I was like,
right, okay, so they actually came from the books. Okay, that was cool. Because I must admit, I was watching the whole game because I'm like, all right, I need to see at least one character that I think is gay, not just because of their hair. And it happened because they're leaning up against the thing, they're having a drink, and they're like, oh yeah, this is my partner, such and such. I'm like, yes, okay, cool. Two female presenting characters. They're using she, her pronouns. They're a couple. Gay couple. Done. Well done. Thank you, game.
Yeah, there is another gay couple, a Crimson Dawn agent whose boyfriend is this party animal, rich explorer who is horrible at exploring, and he gets captured, and you have to go rescue him. And it's played up like this big syndicate thing, but it's just a guy sending you to rescue his boyfriend.
My gallant rescuer. Tell me, did my boyfriend send you?
But then there was also Kay. One thing I really like is that there's no romance options. You can't romance Freud or something like that.
Her sexuality was a little ambiguous.
Yeah, and there's one of the moments that stuck out most was when you first upgrade your speeder bike.
Yeah.
On the first planet, that character kind of flirts with Kay, and she gets a little flustered. So.
Yeah, I thought there were moments where some of the female characters were flirting with her as well. And now I chose not to read into that too much, because I'm like, okay, what I am seeing as flirty could very much just be intended as two women being friendly to each other, right? But I thought that was there as well. But I thought again, I thought it was clever that they left her sexuality a little ambiguous because you could see that as flirting, but you don't really kind of see anything going on between her and any of the male characters as well. I think that could be that she could be asexual. You never know. And the important thing is not to label it, because I guess they've left it ambiguous for us to read into it whatever we will. Because these days in games, they are actually making these decisions, and there are queer people in the development teams who are helping drive some of this representation, and they're getting bolder, and I like it. Would I maybe have liked to have seen them go a little bit further? Yeah, maybe, but hey, at least there was some there, right? There was definitely some.
Agreed.
Any final thoughts, Sam? Anything you feel that we haven't really touched on that you really, really just want to get off your chest about Star Wars Outlaws?
Did you at all during your travels through the galaxy stop at one of the food stalls to eat street food?
I did not. I did notice them, and I really kind of enjoyed the vibe because you would walk past them at nighttime, and it just kind of reminded me of walking down a side street in Bangkok, and there's all these like street food vendors and everyone's sitting around having something to eat. I noticed the detail of it, but I never stopped to actually eat. You could do that?
I don't want to say anything. I will say that is the cutest, most just relaxing moment in a video game I have ever seen. It's got the cuteness of the cutscenes they have in Monster Hunter, where the little cats prepare all the meals.
Yeah. I know that ones.
But it's just this. I didn't expect it, and I think that's why I encourage people to go out and seek it.
Okay.
Because it's completely just something somebody would do in real life, and it was just this nice little moment to have an open world where this nice little moment happened amongst the drug running, the smuggling, the bounty hunting, and the chaos.
Sam, thank you as always for joining me on this in-depth conversation. I enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed our retrospective of BioShock. I'm sure that there are more to come. Before we head off, where can the Bargain Bin Gamers find you online?
You can find me at ancientlifestl.org. That is the museum that I am the director and founder of. We now have over 250 real fossils on display.
Nice.
Along with some amazing replicas. About 50 exhibits currently, with one new exhibit coming out per week. And I have a staff now, which is insane to think about. So it's just shout out to my staff, who are the best group of interns I could have ever asked for.
That's it for now. Remember that Mitch and I will be back again soon to unpack some bargain shovelware on the Switch, which is an absolute crime, as the more we dig into it, pun intended. And also really, really exciting coming up in October. Mitch and I are going to PAX Melbourne, and we will be taking the recording equipment with us. And we've already started talking to some indie developers online who we're going to spend some time with while we're there. It's going to be really fun. Sam, thank you again for joining. I'll see you next time on the Bargain Bin Gamer. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give it a big thumbs up on YouTube, or follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from and leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky, and follow along on our live Twitch streams. You can also continue the conversation in our BQN podcast Discord by clicking the link in the episode description. Don't forget that the Bargain Bin Gamer is part of a larger network of podcasts called the BQN. You can support this and other BQN programs by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/BQN. We'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or send us an email to bargainbingamer, GAYMER, @gmail.com. Until next time, au revoir.
Double T Media.